Okay, comfortable?
Very comfortable. I have my notes.
All right, well, this is a video podcast that I've wanted to make, I don't know, maybe 10 years. Every year I've thought I should make this because it keeps coming up, that I had an amazing business. It was an incredible success. And you and I have talked off camera. So this is Martin, and behind the camera is Harrison. Yo. And so we're going to talk about Perry Tate's Computers, right? And this year is the 20th anniversary of that business.
Not only talk about that, we're also going to talk about everything you learned from that.
Yes. And we'll see if we can apply it. So anybody listening, we'll see if we can apply it to what that might mean if I have my business. Some of the things that I've learned and I apply in this business, I could also share in a way that, because I was also a window cleaner, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe there's some angles that people will be able to go, whoa, like I get it. That's why I should do this, why I don't do that, why I shouldn't do this, whatever.
And sometimes people can give you advice, but sometimes you just own it yourself. You have to do it yourself and realize, I made a mistake here. I need to really own it myself.
Yeah.
To bring it into.
Well, I think everybody wants to learn from other people's mistakes, but you can only gather data about other people's mistakes, right?
Exactly.
And then, I'm 57 now, right? And this happened when I was 35. And I can remember when I was 25 through to 30, I was asking, actually, that when I met people I respected, the last thing I'd say to them is, at the end of the whatever interaction I had with them was like, if you had just one piece of advice for me, what would it be? And it was interesting that later on when I start making mistakes, so I really thought I had a head full of old man wisdom, And then Harrison knows I've tried to bring him up with, his old man wisdom, but actually I know he can only have data when something happens. He'll go, that's what you meant.
Yeah. That's what you're talking about. It's funny, right? You can read these great advices, and then sometimes in your life you just meet these challenges and you just, now I get it.
Yeah.
You still make a mistake.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to make the mistake and then apply your wisdom. So the guys who read lots of business books, definitely read business books, read books of quotes and sayings, fill your head up with all the wisdom so that when you make your mistake, you have data to go, this is what's happening. I kind of know what to do now, but you won't be able to, historically, I don't know anybody who's been able to not make the mistake because they had the data.
All right. So it's the space in between having it on paper and actually owning it real.
Yeah, let's say you're a great architect, but you've never built, and then you start building and realize, what's drawn maybe doesn't turn into reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to adapt. All right, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to go back a little bit on that, and then we're going to look at how you apply it today, basically.
Yeah.
Not only for your company, but also for your way of life, family, etc.
Yeah. Let's dig as deep as we can
and
see what we can get from it, right?
All right. So, start.
Okay. So I think, from the very beginning, firstly, I had my first business when I was 25, right? So I had a sense of entrepreneurialism. It was a franchise, so I had a lot of support and structures and systems and stuff like that. So that was interesting. And then
what kind of support you had?
Well, because it's a franchise, so I was actually selling a product that other people, they were like Kalamazoo systems. I don't know if you remember those, but before computers came in, accounting was all done manually, and these were carbon-backed paper systems that would transfer what you wrote through up to 5 places. So it was really, really efficient. It's a funny thing that I look back on my life and say the things that I've done really well have something to do with efficiency. Right? And the things I've tried to sell insurance, I've tried to sell this and do that in different things I've done. But when I do something that's not to do with efficiency, it hasn't been golden for me. It's kind of like an interesting retrospective sort of thought about oneself, to say, is there a common word that passes through everything you've done in your life that worked, right? That's a great question to ask yourself, So, so back in 1996, when I'm 33, I think I came across a warehouse. It was with a lady called Moira, and we were actually doing Money and You. I was selling Money and You actually, which is it's still running today. It's one of the best self-development programs. Anyway, we came across this warehouse of second-hand or traded in Apple IIe's, right? Which I don't even know what it's. I know the screen is like that big, right? Little black and white screen. And we kind of had a conversation about how or what we could do with them. And I got this vision, like it was much more than a business plan, but I wrote out a business plan about what I'd do with those computers or whatever. But the vision was that those computers there, those little Apple IIe's, that they were potentially the answer for somebody. So if I paraphrase, where I got to is that poverty truncates possibility for people. So sitting in poverty is all this potential, like us coming to Asia.
But how does that apply to computer?
Well, because the thing is that if your mum and dad don't have an education and they don't have any money, and you're growing up, doesn't matter how great your brain is at that point, the possibility of you like evolving at your full potential is really much less. And so I thought and dreamed and wrote it out and owned, long before Perry Tate's computers, that if I could put a computer in the home of every kid in Australia, right, then each kid would have access to their full potential. And we're going back, this is Windows 3.1, this is before Google. I really think it's before Google, right? It's Windows 3.1 was the operating system in a Microsoft system before Windows 95, which is before XT. Like, you're going back.
It's a lot of information on the computer. If you go to this business you started, and what happened?
Yeah, so I got the opportunity to use direct response television.
Google was founded in 1997.
Google was founded in 1997. Well, there you go. So it was just Google days, right? So there you go. Thank you. So I remember somebody telling me about Google for the first time. And so I got this opportunity to grab these ex-government, ex-lease computers. They were all main brands: IBM, Digital, Compaq. Dell didn't exist back then. Gateway didn't exist back then. Apple was there, but they had their own operating system, so they weren't part of the formula. So we were able to buy off the leasing company, the 3 years or 4 years in off a lease, and buy them, and then refurbish them, and then sell them.
How do you mean refurbish?
So basically you've got to strip the hard drive of all the government data.
You did that?
There's a whole story that sits around there, right? So, we started just by buying 20 at a time, so it was...
So how did you have access to some TV commercial as well?
Yeah, so I had a mentor like David Hammer, and he's from the Demtel, as people who know direct response television. He's one of the legends of TV, and he became my mentor. He opened the opportunity for me, and I said, yeah. He saw my personality, my character, that I whatever, blah blah blah. So I said, okay, I'm in. I'll do it.
And how did it expand from that? From
right.
Computers?
Well, once he knew how to write a television ad.
Yeah.
Right. So he was my coach back then, but he was actually driving the way. We'd run 4-minute commercials and we'd get 500 phone calls. So you get 500 phone calls, and then we ended up with a big call center. We ended up with 105 people working in the company. But
how long did it take before you went from small to
14 months?
14 months, okay. It just exploded? Or
exploded,
what?
yeah. Okay. And we didn't, we thought, every time we did something, we thought we got it right? Mm-hmm. And when we got it right, everything's fine.
But when you get it right, you mean that more people are buying.
Yeah, so the word gets out, everybody tells their friends, the TV ads have been running longer, right? It's, ring now. Like if you think about it, we had to get... and we only advertise, this is all like small talk, but it's interesting. We only advertised in low TARPs, right? TARPs is the rating time. Okay. So we advertised in low TARPs, which is like Days of Our Lives, late night, or through the night and stuff like that. And that's where, and you've got to get somebody, she's on a lounge, mum is, or dad's on the lounge, and you've got to get them to their landline. Right? They're not going to their mobile phone and watching. So you're in an ad break. If if John Boy is just about to kiss Mary Lou
You don't want to bring
in that ad break,
right?
yeah, that's right. Especially like a Friday, like Fridays were terrible, right? Because that's when John Boy is just about to plant one on Mary Lou, right? Goes to an ad break, right? And there's my ad, right? That phone's not going to ring. They want
But
to.
obviously, you managed to get people out of their couch and get to the landline.
Yeah.
So what was it that you think made it success?
Well, the ad is the product. The ad is what makes people ring. So the ad got the people in, and we'd have 500 people ring. We'd say, "What's your name and number? What's your name and number? We'll ring you back. We'll ring you back." And then we'd gather all of this queue, right? And then we'd ring everybody back one by one, over the next day or two, until the next ad runs like that.
Okay, so you had so much people calling and so much orders, and then.
Well, it started small.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the lessons is it started small, and so we were able to handle it, and then it got bigger, and then it got bigger. Right, and that raised all sorts of issues because the founding people who started with me were gold. They loved me, I loved them, right? And then all of a sudden the business is growing bigger than them. So I need to hire people who have got more experience than what they had, because you've got to hire people that are better than you, who have been where you want to go, so that they can draw you up there, you know. So we had a turnover of staff, which was horrible, and then. Let's say you go from 0 to 20 computers a day, and then you have a turnover of staff. Well, 6 months later, we're at 50 computers a day, and the guy that we hired to do 20 computers a day and the refurbishment, pack and send and all that sort of thing, that guy is now overwhelmed. He's now out of his depth. So then I got to get another person who's better than him. Somebody who's done real production, real this, real that, understands supply chain, understands this, understands that, understands quality control, understands shipping, understands how to pack so things don't break, So this guy's only been with me maybe 3 or 4 months, and then I'm putting somebody over the top of him.
So when did you come to a point when it was escalating?
Well, it's all inside. If you imagine, it's all happening in a year. And this is the days and we're buying different brand computers. We bring them in, we clean them up, we check them, they're working. But there's a simple mistake, which I think is the most classic one, is that there were computers which had PS2 mice and AT mice. That's the connector that goes into the back of the computer. Well, if somebody didn't understand, we'd cleaned the mouse and checked it, we'd cleaned the computer and checked it, we'd cleaned the keyboard and checked it. But if somebody put the wrong keyboard or the wrong mouse in that box, the computer didn't work. Right? Now, when you've got 5, even if you talked about, let's talk about 10 a day, right? So you've got 10 a day. So 10 a day go out, right? So let's say they arrive 1 week later. There are 50 out there now. And it's not all of them have got a problem. It's a statistical problem, But it's doubled by the mouse and the keyboard both had 2 different connectors. So you get this percentage.
But it started to get out.
Well, this is not out of control, but to understand out of control is to understand the sorts of things that can get out of control, right? So I'm not going straight to the end. It's kind of like the lessons on the way through, right? And
so when did you learn from that?
The maths. I want to tell you the maths, right? Because the maths is, by the time we even got the first phone call, there's already 50 dispatched. Right? Then you're trying to work out what's going wrong. What is it? How do I fix it? Run with your team. Everybody has to own that something is going wrong once we know what's going wrong. That's another week, let's say. So now you have 100, right? So let's say 30 of them have to come back because at the time we didn't know what was going wrong. So we just send it back, we'll fix it, right?
So that list just kept growing.
And it gets bigger. Yeah. And then you're rolling out 20 a day while you don't know what the problem is. Right, and then the 30 come back, and then another 15 come back, and then another 15. Let's say if you can't solve the problem, so now instead of putting out 20 a day, you're now having to put out 25 a day because you've had to reprocess those ones. So it's doubling up on you. So what did I learn from that? I know you want to get to this one, right? Is to hold the handbrake on. I mean, Harrison knows. I've said from the beginning, I could build this business much bigger, much faster. Like in that gung-ho 35-year-old Perry Tate, Yeah,
because you mentioned before about problems. You don't want to have too many problems you cannot solve. Then it's going to go
south. If you can't handle all the inbound phone calls, let's say something's a disaster, and you can't, within the scope of the resources that you've got, if you can't handle the problem, then you're growing too fast.
Talk about the handbrake. What is the handbrake and how
Well,
to apply it?
I mean, like from a reach it perspective,
you can give an example of a product, for example. You've done.
no, because it's a philosophy.
Okay.
It's that the handbrake is like we pulled out of the UK market, right? So early days, yeah. We're back in there, like friendly in there, but we're not like gung ho. We were in America and Australia and New Zealand and Canada. We just push, but then we go, oh. And that was to get it going, because we started, just Harrison and I started together, just the two of us, you know.
But you got out of there. That was a handbrake moment?
That's a handbrake moment, like pull it up, right, and say, we can't handle these two markets. We can't handle the two different issues. They clean windows for £3 a house. These guys clean windows for $500 a house. You know, they're completely different markets. They've got a market share leader, Gardner. Like, they don't have a market share leader because they clean windows differently and the products work differently. So we pulled up and pulled out of distributors, right? And just kept one distributor, which was WCR back then, right? And that's a big handbrake moment, because you're turning down hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in revenue, you know? But we can handle it. Well, now we can focus again.
Yeah.
I mean, there's another one. Like when we started Reach It, we had 12 different polls. Yep. And then I said, no, I think we've got some really clever ideas with the End Defender. You know, we felt that we were on point on that. And the XT, which became the Plus C, right? We were the first people in the world to think of that. And so when we got that, we actually took 3 weeks out of the business. We're only 3 people in the company. But we took 3 weeks out and wrote a patent, an innovation patent, right? Start to finish, and registered it of what we thought was our idea. And we came back to just 2 products. So we had Reach It Mini and Reach It Pro.
That's very interesting, because you said the handbrake allowed us to focus.
Yes.
Basically, you can focus on a few products and make it good.
Yes.
Build slowly.
Yeah, if you move too fast, you've got too much. You've got too many of your attention units.
Yeah.
Too many different things.
Yeah. It is a lot to do with attention units. How much you can, and it's not just your attention units, it's your collective attention units of your team, you know.
So handbrake allows the team to focus a little bit.
A lot, you know, because you're focusing on what you have. You know, you're slowing down. The handbrake basically is, you know, okay, you've accelerated, you've taken the foot off the accelerator, you put the brake on, it's not working as much as you want it to. Pull the handbrake.
All those handbrakes you put with Reach It is based on your previous experience.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, the handbrake just basically says, slow and steady wins the race. You know, it's the lesson of the hare and the tortoise. You know, if you go too fast, too long, right, something can happen. Now, if nothing goes wrong, it never materializes. But you don't know nothing. Like, that's what you don't know when you're young. You don't know nothing's going to go wrong. You just think nothing's going to go wrong.
You just think you're going to solve it.
Yeah, so like if you said to me, like, what's a saying that I know now as an older guy, right? Like what I mentor Harrison, expect the unexpected. He knows I spend more time thinking about what I haven't thought about. Right? Because I know so many things happen that we couldn't have imagined. Yeah. Right? So many things went wrong that we wouldn't have, we just couldn't foresee them, you know? Yeah.
So it's almost like trying to predict the future.
Yes, in a positive, negative way, right? You're actually...
What if this happens, and what can I do about it?
Yes, yes.
Look,
I'll tell you another one. I met I can talk about the mentors that I had, a South African guy. I said, so how do you choose your business opportunity? He was a millionaire, right? And he said to me, the first thing I do is I look at what could go wrong, and can I afford that, right? Then I look at what could go wrong and what could I make, right? If I can afford what could go wrong and it's got opportunity to make, then I'll do it. But if I can't afford what could go wrong, I walk away no matter how much I could make. Yeah?
So it's the thing you cannot really, most people cannot see behind.
Unless, what you absolutely know, the guy who said that to me had failed. That's what you know. Because he would never be there as a guy out of university with a business degree, you know, saying, I'm going to assess everything that could go wrong and still have the balls to do it.
So,
you know?
I want to talk about, again, we'll go back a little bit. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'll have to cut that.
No, it is what it is.
No, so if we talk about failures, you can look at it two ways, right? Just like you said now, all these failures becomes experience. And if we go back to this computer company that you have, and it basically escalated. And more and more
Well,
computers.
if you look at it this way, do you think Michael Jordan made every shot?
No.
That's the whole point.
Yes. So Michael Jordan can't hit 100% of his shots. But if you say that in this context, people could take it the wrong way. You know, that's one of the ambiguities that we could get misquoted on, because it's got a tone of, you know, excuse me, I made a mistake, you know, but it's not like that. It's a reality. You know, it's not everything works. It just
Especially when you're innovating.
I pooed my pants once. Yeah. You know, my sphincter didn't work. I don't know. You know, I'm trying to think of something really graphic, but where you go, like, there's just things that just don't always work that you think should work all the time. Yeah. Like, that's
you have to deal with them.
I'm trying to think
you
about
have to deal with them,
and then you have to deal with it, right? It's tough to clean up. Right now, we're getting there. It's starting to work. It's starting to work.
Oh, well, that's why you think about what can I do with this, because we're always thinking ahead. Thinking ahead.
I carry tissues.
Instead of like thinking now. Maybe before it was more about how do I solve this today. But now you're more like, okay, let's think 6 months ahead. Let's think one year ahead.
Yes.
Like if this happened, it happened before, how can I solve it? How can I manage it? How can I control it?
And the thing is that whilst from where you're saying is like, I'm thinking, but actually when you've had the experiences, you're not just thinking. You know what I mean? You're drawing on your own. I don't know if you can call it anecdotal evidence, but it's kind of like your own experiential database. You know, you're calling on that to speak to you, right? Yeah. So you're kind of mentoring yourself from your own experiences. Yeah. And when you're reading books and you're listening to, like, I love Gary Vee, right? He's an entrepreneur, promoter, encourager, right? And when I listen to him, I go, yes. In fact, yes. 2 days ago, I sent you a link, and I actually laughed out loud watching Gary Vee, and I said, "Oh my God," because he was describing entrepreneurs, and he said, the thing about entrepreneurs is that they just don't worry about it all failing, right? You can't grab an entrepreneur and say you're going to fail and somehow affect him or her. Because that's their life, right? It's completely a foundation stone.
all about solving problems.
Yeah, you set out with a dream.
Oh, this is not working. How do we solve this? This problem, we need to fix this.
Yeah, and you see us like when we're here, like we're stoic. Yeah. Like we get emotional from time to time. We take a hit from time to time. Then we have to pick ourselves up and run the formula of saying, well, we've got a responsibility to solve the problem and come up with an answer and do the best you can.
Talking about Gary Vee, he had I think Harrison mentioned it, he has a saying, only truth. So how all these truths you learn now.
Right.
How do you apply that to reach it?
Well, I can apply it to both these stories. One, Perry Tate's computers, right, is that the truth is we sold and delivered 8,000 computers in a year, right? We had orders for just short of another 1,000 computers and printers. We had 1,000 computers and printers in our warehouse, but we had a problem, which we can talk about, that we couldn't turn them into computers, all of them. And then we closed the company down, right? And that's a truth. I mean, that's a part of the Perry Tate story. You know, it's not going to go anywhere. When we look at Reach It, the truths run on a different angle because we've had a fantastic success, right? So we can talk about, for example, you know, in this case, how people would use things that have happened to you against you, right? Also becomes a truth. Like I remember the first time I had a phone call with Chris from WCR is I said to him, listen, I got to tell you something. Like 10 years ago, right, because this is going back 10 years now, 10 years ago, I had a spectacular business that fell over, right? Let's say it that way, right? And there's a little bit of press about it, and there's somebody who's going to dig it up, and there's somebody who's going to use it against me somewhere, or ring you up and say, did you know that he had a computer business and it, you know, it fell over and blah, blah, blah. Like, it was a household name. I mean, it was, you know, it was spectacular.
You were like, you can walk on an airplane and people knew who you were.
Yeah,
basically.
hello, Mr. Tate. Yeah, it was like that, you know.
And you, after this, you basically turned to window cleaning.
Yeah. So,
if you're gonna turn it out.
you know, like that's
How
what.
did that happen?
Oh well, like one of the pivotal moments of my experience, like, you know, your awareness of yourself, is that we'd put the company into administration, and it was in the hands of an administrator. You know, so there's a you know, companies that are set up to deal with those companies, and I met one of my suppliers. He was selling us the computers, and I met him in a shopping center, and I said, hey, you know, like, I'm helping out, like, we're actually still in computers at this point, but I was like a consultant to the guy, Barton.
I'm not sure where we are now. Are we
Right.
back to the beginning of
No, this is at the end,
Okay.
right afterwards.
The administrator helped shut down.
Yeah, so the administrator closed down the company. I'm out in the shopping center. I'm consulting to my ex-general manager, right? So he's the guy who went through everything, the whole shutdown and everything with me. And he said, I want to do this, right? Can we do it in a way that we don't use television? I said, sure, right? We get a roadside warehouse. We advertise so people can come to the warehouse. They give you the money. They take the computer. Everything's sorted. If something goes wrong, they know where to bring it back next weekend, right? All the issues that we'd experienced by being on television, never meeting our customer, posting and couriering the product, like, all solved in this little enterprise. And that you'll have to help me get back on track, Harry. But that event was me consulting to him, was where a journalist from ARN, which is Australian Reseller News or something like that, tiny little computer magazine, goes, oh, the disgraced Perry Tate is back in business, you know. Wow. But actually I was only a consultant to it, and it was a really nice little business, you know. So where was I up to before that?
I would just say that the idea on the Gary Vaynerchuk thing was just, he was consulting someone who went to his 4Ds, like, daily digital deep dive thing.
Right.
And the guy's like, hey, I got some history, you know, and having a previous company, people keep bringing it up. Like,
right.
Own that truth.
Just own the truth. I mean, this is...
It reminded me of you. I sent the clip to you immediately.
Yeah.
It reminded me of what you've already told me.
Yeah, and it comes up, like, you know, for us, it comes up every year, right? It's 20 years every year, right? And then if somebody's important, I tell them about it up front so that nobody can send them the little press release or say, you know, Perry Tate was this, Perry Tate was that, and take them by surprise. And then they go, whoa, like, you know, whatever, you know.
So I'm not sure really what happened. Did it affect other people, or?
No, well, that's what we did, is when we realized that we couldn't continue to trade, we closed down our advertising, and then we terminated 60-something staff in the first wave, and then when we put the administrator... Then we went down to about 40 people and started winding everything up. And then we went down to 12 with the administrator. And in that time, you know, before anything sort of went weird, we were able to contact everybody who paid with a credit card and say, go to your credit card provider and ask for your money back because the product's not coming. Everybody who paid cash, the computers that we could refurbish, we sent to those people. You know,
so you did things right.
Our suppliers entered into an agreement for like 500 repairs and things like that of the computers which they supplied, because like here's another lesson, right? Here's another lesson. We took the money, somebody else refurbished it and sent it. Like, we were kind of like a middleman. But at the end of the day, whoever takes the money has a responsibility, right? So the buck stopped with me. Those suppliers know that they didn't put the right mouse or keyboard in. You know, so they kind of felt a bit of a, you know, like of a corporate guilt or something like that. I'm not saying
so
real guilt.
You had another company to put things together.
Yeah, we were like a middleman. Yeah. My best friend in New Zealand, Steve Roberts, he was my Fastway courier pickup guy. He ended up being my factory manager, and we had a factory to try and refurbish faster alongside, you know, these ex-lease companies and stuff like that. So you know, but he's still my best friend. I was best man at his wedding and stuff like that. These are the guys who actually went through the journey with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Harrison sometimes says to me, he says, like, if you really, really were this bad guy that everybody wants to make you out to be, then you wouldn't have called the business Perry Tate's.
That's true.
You'd have called it, like, you know, supercomputers, something like that, you know? And then when it goes down, nobody knows who you are, right? It's just because the business was called Perry Tate's Computers. Because in Australia, we've got these iconic people, maybe all over the world, there are iconic people. We had Dick Smith, right? Dick Smith's Electronics. And I thought, you know, this is my legacy, right? I mean, I'm going to change the world. I'm the guy who's going to put a computer in the house of every kid in Australia, you know? And that was me, you know? So it was Perry Tate's Computers, and it may be egotistical, you know, I don't know, but that's where I was at, you know?
And then
I could have changed the name of the company at the last minute to another name and let that name go down, you know?
But you didn't.
But I didn't. I owned it the whole time, right?
So,
it was such a great success. You know, there's 8,000 families got computers. I know there's 1,000 computers we didn't deliver, but they didn't lose their money. You know, if it was a reality, maybe there's 20, 30, 40 or something that may have, which none of us can track, because once the administrator takes over the company, we can't get in to see what actually happened. But, you know.
But you have got a lot of bad press for this, basically.
We got one piece of bad press, right? As we were failing, we got some bad press, and then we set everything right, and we got an investigation, right? So the state government investigated us to say, you know, was it a crime? You know, did we pilfer the money? You know, did we just take the money and not deliver, and then take the money home, and so they can check our bank accounts and see that we like.
So what was the outcome?
Clean as a whistle. Like, I had no money, and that's how. Oh, that answers your question.
What happened then?
I became a window cleaner.
All right. So you had no money basically after that.
No,
You were just,
no.
And your name.
And I was a single dad, and I was Perry Tate. I didn't change my name or anything like that. So
you took it.
And took it on the chin, and then I started selling. We got into toys, and then I started selling cleaning franchises, and then I got into window cleaning.
That is
rolling
from
along.
A computer, big company, and then cleaning windows. That's a journey.
Yeah. Well, then you go from clean windows, which is not a lowly thing, but it was just something which you could do without a lot of capital. It's a business you could start without needing a lot of money. Then we imported the poles from Denmark, you know, and we couldn't sell them, so then I had a problem. So we went to all these trade shows and everything, and business people would say, yeah, you can clean windows for me if you want. So we had to start we actually intended just to be in manufacturing. And then they said, you can clean windows for me. So then I started a window cleaning business to use this product that I was selling, you know.
You hardly landed before you were thinking about a new business, basically. And
Yeah.
It could have been any business.
Yeah, it could have been.
Window cleaning.
Yeah, but
And you just took it and just, how can I make business out of this?
Yeah.
So
And I had to work from home, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, because I had the kids,
You
you
need
know.
one pole for that.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, you just saw a business opportunity quite fast in this.
Well, and necessity and opportunity, because I mean, the window cleaning business we started, which is like a slight digression, but it was the ladderless window cleaning company. So we actually started with the intention of never climbing a ladder, because I was scared of heights, and I was already in my 40s, you know.
All right.
Yeah.
So you said you went to Denmark.
Oh, we just imported from Denmark. Yeah, some poles. So
And
that's.
this was when?
This is 2006, maybe.
All right.
So maybe another 7 years later, you know. But if I go back, like some of the things we want to talk about is what did we learn, what went wrong, and what did we learn,
exactly.
right? And how do we apply that to not only
your current company, but also window cleaning
Yes,
in general.
yes.
How can someone who's watching this
pick up a lesson? And remember it's just data. You know, it won't stop anything going wrong, but it'll help you understand what happens.
You can pull the handbrake.
You got pull the handbrake, right?
Exactly.
That's a takeaway, right?
Yeah,
So,
don't go too fast.
yeah,
Handbrake is like slow yourself down, slow down so you can actually deliver.
So, well, A, so you can deliver. B, so you can take any calls that come in. C, which is more importantly than anything, emotionally, so that you can actually grow your team. We didn't have time to grow our team, so we had to replace the team. And
That costs a lot of money.
and it's so emotionally, and then your morale is broken because you're replacing a leader, or there's so many dimensions to, whereas you compare it to now, you look at this team that we've got here.
Yeah.
Like statistically in China, when Chinese New Year comes around, 30% of the work of the company's staff don't come back. Last year, we have 100%. We had not one person stayed in their hometown or changed jobs.
It's about, like you said, it's about growing slowly.
I think growing slowly. I mean, Gary Vee talks about it too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He just says patience. You need patience, right? Take patience. Don't try and get it all too quick.
Well, it actually takes 3 times longer than you feel like it's going to take.
Yeah.
You can push it quick. You can push it that.
Oh, I mean, I'm an accelerator. I'm a momentum maker. I can roll things along. But, you can roll a bigger rock faster. But
then
it's got to be a bigger rock.
Out.
Yeah.
And you're building a team of people.
Yes. Well, that's one of, I don't know if you've read this, but there's a saying which says you can never build a great company. You can only build a great team, and that team builds a great company, right? And that's that tear down of growing too fast, where it's, unless you've got investor, the guys PayPal through to WhatsApp, through to Facebook, all that, they all got investors. So they were able to, and they're investors, and then they the investor set up a board, and the board was old people who had made a lot of mistakes, no doubt, right? Not full of students. And then they're able to put the right person in to be a CEO, the right person in to be a production manager, you know what I mean? That's a different experience from growing organically, which was what we did, and what we're doing is Reach It,
About growing a company, you have to have a group of people going towards the same goal.
Yeah.
And if you're too fast, people feel burned out, or they're not seen.
You see,
then they will drop out. They have to hire new people, and it takes time for them to get into the group.
Yep.
So
don't blame them, train them. That comes in, these are the little sayings, right?
That's a great saying. Don't blame them, train them.
Yeah, but if you're going too fast, you've got no time to train because you're too busy with this. If you've got too many problems, the problems are coming in, overwhelming you. Yeah. The overwhelm becomes, what did we do? We had $1.5 million in the bank. If I knew to refund $500,000, right, $500,000, I would have taken away a workload of $500,000 worth of computers that I didn't have to find or deliver.
There's a lot of problems
gone. And what did I do instead?
Sorry, we can't deliver because we could.
Yeah, and do you know what I did instead? Right, I put on customer service people because they wanted a computer and I wanted to give them a computer.
You wanted to please them.
So in the end, we had 46 people on the customer service, right? And that chewed up the same amount of money, right? Basically, as we could have refunded.
So
it's a funny little circle of learning,
Yeah. So how do you apply that? What would you do different today?
Oh, handbrake on. I think the most important thing is, we had an example the other day. We've got about 150 deep frame window weapons or deep frame all-rounders out there, and we had 3 that broke. All of them broke when they got dropped, right? So we knew that it wasn't a break in use, right? We knew that it was a break from an impact. However, and then one of our customers saw one of those posts or whatever, and he owned one, so he took his apart and he had a look at it. He said, well, if you did this, none of them would break, right? So in that case, we pulled up production, right? So we had orders, we pulled up production, changed, we have to send the pieces out, get the machine, make new pieces to go into it, and we followed this. There's Craig Hardman in Geelong, Australia, who we rewarded him nicely, for solving a problem.
This is so typical, really, because you're always working with the window cleaners all over the world.
Yeah.
And you're always looking for feedback, because
Yep.
every new product has to be tested. You can sit in the computer, you can try it, but you have to be out on the field working daily with it to push the product.
And you can't,
You cannot do
I
that.
can't test it. I'm not on the Windows, and I'm not on the Windows like this guy, and I'm not a Neanderthal, right? So the beginning was we had guys in their 50s and 60s as our product testers, and we didn't think, these guys aren't 25-year-old guys who are just bang, bang. We didn't think about the people who came from the old days where they'd have fiberglass poles and bang the brush against the frame as the control, right? So then they start doing that with a Reach It brush. There's all sorts of things. You have to put it out there.
Can you say that again? Instead of Neanderthal, say heavy-handed user?
a heavy-handed user. We don't have any heavy-handed users, right? We didn't take into consideration, like our product testing team were not heavy-handed, right? They were delightfully gentle, ergonomically sound, looking after their bodies, you know, this kind of guy.
Tell me about your day, because I know you work hard, and I know you get up early.
As soon as I wake up, I check through Messenger, WeChat, Facebook, scan for something that might be hot, right? Mostly in Facebook.
And what do you mean by hot?
Just something that's burning out, like too many people talking about it. Now, it could be hot positive or it could be hot negative, right? So, but I always look for that and think, you know, because sometimes I wake up and there's guys into each other.
Oh, okay.
Right? And I go, whoa.
It's like a bar brawl. Yeah. You probably don't think guys.
Well, it is a bar brawl because they're probably the time of when I'm waking up, you know, they're probably on their first couple of drinks or whatever. I don't know. But so we do that.
But I also know that you are a sucker for innovation. You love new ideas that can help you clean windows faster. I know that.
Yeah.
So how do you keep all those innovation ideas? How do you deal with them?
I don't know.
Because I know you have so many people giving you ideas. You can try this, you can try this, you can try this, and you can try it all, right?
Yeah. And because I'm used to solving problems, I always was. Like when these computers, if you had Windows 3.1 and you got a folder, you could drag it off the screen and it stayed there. Like Windows 95 brought the border of the software in line with the screen border, right? So people will ring us up and say, you did this on purpose, my games folder's gone, right? Like this. So we built a product called Cruise Control, right? And Cruise Control controlled all of the freeware that we gave them on the screen. They couldn't drag it anywhere, and then they could click through to Windows 3.1, right? Another one. It was like we were selling computers before anybody had used computers. So then they ring us up and say, how do I use it? Now that's like selling a car and then them coming back to you and saying, you've got to teach me how to drive this, right? And so now your salesman's now teaching people how to drive. So what do we do with that? We hired this young couple, amazing young couple, and they developed, we started a new business called Event Education, and we paid for them to go to town hall to town hall to town hall to teach for free how to use a computer, right? Because that would get rid of that.
And this is something you do now?
It's the same logic, right? Is it that you, like when you say innovation, the seed of an innovation is a problem, right? So you're hearing the problem, and then you're trying to hear the problem from as many different angles as you can, and then you're trying to let your intuition, your attention units, and then other guys feeding ideas. Oh, I do this, I do that, or you could do this or could do that, or have you thought about this, or have you thought about that, you know?
So you take all this information, all these ideas, and how I can solve it.
Yeah.
You put it into a product, and then.
And I have to concatenate it, right? Yeah. I have to take concatenation is where you've got different columns, and you can concatenate them into one column. Yeah. So I have to concatenate the problem and the potential solutions, and then try and concatenate them and turn them into a product.
Like have a lot of clay
and then if the clay is right, if everything's right, it becomes one piece of clay, and then you've got a product.
And eventually you got to put it out there. You have to put it out there.
You know that, yeah. You're talking about ideas here, right?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. So we're running a program, of education around ideas, which is inspiration through to design, through to execution, allies, who else is involved, and then share, where you actually put the product out. And I think that, this is probably, the experiences with Perry Tate's computers is foundational, and that I didn't bounce out of that into another thing like go, so I'm not a serial go guy, but I feel that the experiences of what went right and what went wrong are very, very much part of what forms the person that I am today, which then can handle, the negatives, like people throw those negatives at me, or the positives, I can handle that, as a person. Like, I don't know if you've read this, but there's a saying which says you can never build a great company. You can only build a great team, and that team builds a great company, right? And that's that tear down of growing too fast, where it's, unless you've got investor, the guys PayPal through to WhatsApp, through to Facebook, all that, they all got investors. So they were able to, and they're investors, and then they the investor set up a board, and the board was old people who had made a lot of mistakes, no doubt, right? Not full of students. And then and then they're able to put the right person in to be a CEO, the right person in to be a production manager. You know what I mean? That's a different experience from growing organically, which was what we did, and what we're doing with Reach It. You know,
you have to have a group of people going towards the same goal.
Yeah.
And if you're too fast, people feel burned out or they're not seen.
You see,
then they will drop out. They have to hire new people, and it takes time for them to get into the group.
Yep.
So
don't blame them, train them. That comes in like these are the little sayings, right?
That's a great saying. Don't blame them, train them.
Yeah, but if you're going too fast, you've got no time to train because you're too busy with this. If you've got too many problems, the problems are coming in, overwhelming you. The overwhelm becomes like, what did we do? Like we had $1.5 million in the bank. If I knew to refund $500,000, right, $500,000, I would have taken away a workload of $500,000 worth of computers that I didn't have to find or deliver.
There's a lot of problems
Gone. And what I do instead?
Sorry, we can't deliver because we could.
Yeah. And do you know what I did instead? Right? I put on customer service people because they wanted a computer and I wanted to give them a computer.
You want to please.
So in the end, we had 46 people on the customer service, right? And that chewed up the same amount of money, right? Basically, as we could have refunded. So it's like it's a funny little circle of learning, you know.
Yeah. So how do you apply that? What would you do different today?
Oh, handbrake on. I think the most important thing is, like, we had an example the other day. We've got about 150 deep frame window weapons or deep frame all-rounders out there, and we had 3 that broke. All of them broke when they got dropped, right? So we knew that it wasn't a break in use, right? We knew that it was a break from an impact. However, and then one of our customers saw one of those posts or whatever, and he owned one, so he took his apart and he had a look at it. He said, well, if you did this, none of them would break, right? So in that case, we pulled up production, right? So we had orders, we pulled up production, changed, we have to send the pieces out, get the machine, make new pieces to go into it, and we followed this. There's Craig Hardman in Geelong, Australia, who we rewarded him nicely, for solving a problem.
This is so typical, really, because you're always working with the window cleaners all over the world.
Yeah.
And you're always looking for feedback, because every new product has to be tested. You can sit in the computer, you can try it, but you have to be out on the field working daily with it to push the product. And you cannot do that. I can't test it. I'm not on the Windows, and I'm not on the Windows like this guy, and I'm not a Neanderthal, right? So the beginning was we had guys in their 50s and 60s as our product testers, and we didn't think, these guys aren't 25-year-old guys who are just bang bang. We didn't think about the people who came from the old days where they'd have fiberglass poles and bang the brush against the frame as the control, right? So then they start doing that with a Reach It brush. Like, there's all sorts of things. You have to put it out there.
Can you say that again? Instead of Neanderthal, say heavy-handed user?
A heavy-handed user. We don't have any heavy-handed users, right? We didn't take into consideration, like, our product testing team were not heavy-handed, right? They were delightfully gentle, ergonomically sound, looking after their bodies, this kind of guy.
Tell me about your day, because I know you work hard, and I know you get up early.
As soon as I wake up, I check through Messenger, WeChat, Facebook, scan for something that might be hot, right? Mostly in Facebook.
And what do you mean by hot?
Just something that's burning out, like too many people talking about it. Now, it could be hot positive or it could be hot negative, right? So, but I always look for that and think, because sometimes I wake up and there's guys into each other.
Oh, okay.
Right? And I go, whoa.
It's like a bar roll. You come in, okay, guys.
Well, it is a bar roll because they're probably, the time of when I'm waking up, they're probably on their first couple of drinks or whatever, I don't know. But so we do that.
But I also know that you are a sucker for innovation. You love new ideas that can help you clean windows faster. I know that.
Yeah.
So how do you keep all those innovation ideas? How do you deal with them?
I don't know.
Because I know you have so many people giving you ideas. You can try this, you can try this, you can try this, and you can try it all, right?
Yeah. And because I'm used to solving problems, I always was. Like when these computers, if you had Windows 3.1 and you got a folder, you could drag it off the screen and it stayed there. Like Windows 95 brought the border of the software in line with the screen border, right? So people will ring us up and say, you did this on purpose. My games folder's gone, right? Like this. So we built a product called Cruise Control, right? And Cruise Control controlled all of the freeware that we gave them on the screen. They couldn't drag it anywhere, and then they could click through to Windows 3.1.1, right? Another one. It was like we were selling computers before anybody had used computers. So then they ring us up and say, how do I use it? Now that's like selling a car and then them coming back to you and saying, you've got to teach me how to drive this, right? And so now your salesman's now teaching people how to drive. So what do we do with that? We hired this young couple, amazing young couple, and they developed, we started a new business called Event Education, and we paid for them to go to town hall to town hall to town hall to teach for free how to use a computer, right? Because that would get rid of that.
And this is something you're doing now?
It's the same logic, right? Is that you, like when you say innovation, the seed of an innovation is a problem, right? So you're hearing the problem, and then you're trying to hear the problem from as many different angles as you can, and then you're trying to let your intuition, your attention units, and then other guys feeding ideas. Oh, I do this, I do that, or you could do this, or could do that, or have you thought about this, or have you thought about that? You know.
So you take all this information, all these ideas, and how I can solve it.
Yeah.
You put it into a product, and then.
And I have to concatenate it, right? Yeah. I have to take concatenation is where you've got different columns, and you can concatenate them into one column. Yeah. So I have to concatenate the problem and the potential solutions, and then try and concatenate them and turn them into a product.
Like have a lot of clay
if the clay is right, if everything's right, it becomes one piece of clay, and then you've got a product.
And eventually you got to put it out there. You have to put it out there.
You know that, yeah. You're talking about ideas here, right?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. So we're running a program, of education around ideas, which is inspiration through to design, through to execution, allies, who else is involved, and then share, where you actually put the product out. And I think that, this is probably, the experiences with Perry Tate's computers is foundational, and that I didn't bounce out of that into another thing like go, so I'm not a serial go guy, but I feel that the experiences of what went right and what went wrong are very, very much part of what forms the person that I am today, which then can handle, the negatives, like if people throw those negatives at me, or the positives, I can handle that, as a person.
All right, so
it's not always comfortable.
I've seen it firsthand. No, but it's about, you talked about the handbrake,
yep.
So you can focus, growing that team slowly, because when you start losing team members, you're losing the brand, you're losing the company.
And you lose your morale, right? And therefore you're losing the enthusiasm to deliver what has never been delivered before, because when you're a design innovation company, you're playing in the realm of what doesn't exist and bringing things into existence, what wasn't. So you need confidence, faith, hope, enthusiasm, so many things. Yeah.
And that's the part of being a business leader, innovator, entrepreneur. Yeah. All right.
Great. So if you want more information about being an entrepreneur, go to #GaryV.com. No, #GaryV, right? Anything Gary V. No, can't do.com. That's me showing my age, right? All right. Should we wind it up?
Yes.
That's enough, isn't it? All right, buddy, you've been great.
Thanks.
Awesome. Faster, better, safer.